Live from the BoD studios, it is Playin and Slayin, episode 92. That's crazy. Like, we're getting awfully close, Troy, to a very big number that's going to require a whole new digit.
3? I don't know what to do. I don't think any of my like graphics I can handle. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to like redo the whole thing to get that extra digit.
Or we just rebrand and change the name of the show and then start over.
We count. It's a countdown. We start counting back down, and then and then we could like pretend like the show's going to end, and then we just start counting back up. It just
back up.
Yeah.
Just constantly play with our listeners and viewers. Yeah.
Create drama, right? Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, that's how you get clicks, or whatever, likes and subscribes. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So tonight's episode, we are going to go through our usual banter, which is now a 2-man banter, as Josh, our dear friend, takes a hiatus from the strenuous life of a podcaster, and Bryce continues to not have free evenings with his little one at home. Someday we'll have the four hosts back together, but for now, Troy, you and I will press on, and we'll talk about gaming and hobbying and other cool stuff, and then a little bit of a special main topic tonight, where we are going to talk about bringing scenes and things from page and screen. So books we enjoy, films we enjoy, shows, and how that translates to either specific encounters in RPGs or various ways of recreating types of battles in miniature games, and a few ideas that we've got on that topic. So something we've talked about adaptations before, and gaming, what would make like a fun the show would make a fun RPG or vice versa. So we're gonna pull the thread a little bit further on that tonight.
But should be fun.
And Troy, we will likely also pitch a few of our own ideas. We'll see what we come up with. So looking forward to that. And before we really get into it, it is important when you are playing and slaying, it is important to stay hydrated. So I heard it getting mixed up before we sat down. No. It sounded like some glass and some ice and.
No, I just had to dig it out of the back. So I went with the old.
Oh, classic.
Yeah. Because actually what my fridge, the BoD fridge, is actually getting a little low on as we go move in the summer, and we're kind of in between the dark, and I need to restock with light, but a whole
so for those
you can't
that
see it is in it says Dragon's Milk for people who are only listening. The classic Dragon's Milk bourbon barrel aged stout from our I gotta remember who makes this stuff.
New Holland.
Yep, our friends at New Holland.
That beer has fueled many a Gen Con and Adaptacon session. So
do you remember, isn't that where we used to sell out the old Adaptacon hotel? That bar, they didn't realize who their crowd was, and they had Dragon's Milk, but they didn't have it very long.
You threw me for a loop because I heard I must have heard all the glass. I thought it was a cocktail getting mixed up.
Yeah, you can't. Well, what's funny is I did a dark glass, not thinking about the dark beer. I had to find a dragon glass. This is a Dragonfall, the convention, and
lovely.
It's a Dragonfall glass, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get a dragon glass, but you can't see the dragon. I have to drink the whole beer, and then it'll be like a surprise for you guys later.
So I fell victim to not having an appropriately stocked fridge, just because I just haven't really bought much beer. But I did have holdover from Adaptacon. So I think was his name Kelly from Geek Nation Tours group gave me his leftover, what was left in the case of Modelo. So I am having the last of the Modelo from Adaptacon. That had been hanging on for dear life in my fridge. So we had some tacos for dinner, so I figured let's have a Modelo for the show beer tonight.
For more shows like this, check out the Goonhammer Media Network. More info at media.goonhammer.com.
And we're back to talk about what we are playing. So, Troy, I was quite jealous the other night when I was bored at home. So I did get a little testy with my comments. What were you playing? Posted to Discord.
John and I. So I think I finally got, even though you could buy it in the store for I don't know how many months, finally got my Kickstarter of Zombicide White Death, the latest installment of the fantasy version of Zombicide, which we love the most. I actually like the kind of the Black Plague kind of fantasy version. Black Plague, Green Horde, and now White Death. And because they have 3 of those, I guess those are the best selling ones, as you can kind of maybe tell. I would assume on CBON is why they keep doing stuff in there. But yeah, so we got White Death out. The cool part of White Death is it really kind of they tweak, again, it's Zombicide. They did tweak a few rules. Interesting is they actually, again, like they do, they kind of cross-pollinate. They pulled in a few rules from and mechanics from like Invader, where you don't, so in this one you don't actually have interior things or you pop doors and zombies. They have this idea of corruption, and so you have like these corruption tiles, which is kind of like the mold tiles if you've played Invader side, and so zombies will come out of those areas along with other things. So they tweak it a little bit. It was cool, but you have walls, you have like you can do like a Zombicide siege with the zombies attacking like your wall, and you have cauldrons that you can do and some ladders, and we just played the first one. It was fun. It's supposed to be easy, but and we were able to take care of it. But it's kind of cool. Like you get to the wall, and then at some point you need to like get out of the wall, run out into kind of, we'll call it no man's land, right, and get some objectives while the zombies are coming. And then you also have the idea of guards, right? So you have like NPC models that kind of like, again, Invader. Okay. You have the robots, right? You have the bots that you can use your actions on instead. Again, you have guards that are on the walls that you can control. So yeah, interesting. I mean, like really, really cool. And then overall it has more of an Asian type theme to some of the miniatures and the zombies and things like that, which is, they're really cool. Not quite my thing. So I mean, I think I would kind of take it and just go kind of back to the kind of full fantasy on some of that, we'll call it European fantasy on some of that. Not that,
sure,
but again, it's hard not to, because there are some really cool models and there's some cool things too. But so again, a lot of fun. I think there's this idea, like John and I were like, now you have like this complete, like, be kind of cool to do like a mash rule set to kind of like, all right, what can you take from here? And depending if you're doing like you could have like a castle and kind of the building, so I think now you got this kind of full set of rules that, again, you can't completely mix and match a little bit, but it'd be interesting to kind of make maybe we'll come up with like kind of a home. I think we're going to get to like a home, brew set of rules. Like here's our version of whether you're playing Black Plague, where you have, because it's kind of, you're going to have 2 things. I'm either going to have building, and maybe you could mix a little bit, but I'm either going to have the buildings and doors where things spawn, or maybe have these this idea of this corruption and people kind of launching that stuff out to do that. So because you do some of that stuff, but it's cool. I think because I think we always, that idea, it's just kind of cool. I think even John took some cool pictures, just kind of point of view models of the zombies kind of coming at the wall, and you see the guys up on the wall, and as Ty said, they weren't painted yet completely, because it was a demo. That's why
I've furiously painted for days to get the Old West one out on the table for the first time at our weekender. Troy, I have high expectations.
I know. Well, that's why it was just John and I. It was just a test run. It was behind closed doors. Yeah.
It does have that aesthetic of that Far East. It made me think of the name of the show. I think it's Kingdom. It's like 2 seasons. It's a Korean zombie, but it's like, back when it was like the dynasties, not like anywhere close to modern. I don't know where the timeline was in that show, but it was reminiscent of like that.
Yep. And then the other, it's over there. I was looking for the box. We haven't played it yet, but two of the other things that were in White Death that were kind of instant sells for me was, again, this will be my metal music kind of thing. They have miniatures from, basically they did the group Lacuna Coil. If you know that group, Italian metal band, they've been around for 20 plus years. Seen them live a few times. Awesome. But they did their whole set, 5 of them, as a set of survivors, which is totally cool. I'm like, oh, I'm in. I don't care what else is in here. In there. And then they have I guess it would be expansion, because you need the core rule, unlike where they kind of have the standalone expansion. This would be an expansion. They have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle expansion called, I think, Time Crash or something like that, that is sitting over there. I'm like, we got to try that now. And so you actually have the Turtles, and April, I think, are survivors. And I think the idea is there you're going to have, they have some tiles in there, so you have buildings. And I think the idea is like they're kind of sliding, something happens and they kind of slide through time. So like it's them with part of the New York things in kind of the back in this ancient thing, and that's why the zombies, and you'll have some of the things. So I want to try that. So that was that looks kind of cool. Yet another mode to kind of play things in. So lots and lots. I think we'll get some good play out of it. And I 3D printed the walls, and I did do that. I had to rush to kind of, I'm like, we're not playing without 3D walls. That was, an absolute for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's, I cannot, even when John and I played, I'm like, I cannot imagine playing this on a flat board. It would be 1/10 of the experience that you get with having the 3D walls on there. So.
Absolutely. Let's see. We got together and played some Frosthaven with John and Josh. A pretty challenging mission. The next one looks even weirder. So it's we found like a couple of quest chains that we're doing that are really pushing the needle for like kind of your standard put tiles down and go Frosthaven / Gloomhaven style quests.
So people they're listening that maybe have played, maybe they know. I was kind of on, I think, Reddit or something, and I didn't I can't remember what I was looking at, something that we were talking about, but I went down this rabbit hole where I didn't realize, because I never read the book. I just go, I'm a very like take me through it player. I've never actually opened the rule book. I think I always lean on John and Ty. John and Ty are basically our rules experts, but they've basically said that you can, like, some of the scenarios are designed by a guy named Matthew something, and those are the ones you got to watch out for. So that's all I learned. I was like, oh, I'll have to, next time we'll have to see if see who designed the scenario. Cause this was on, as I was doing again, you can go right into the way down the weeds in the Reddit thread, but that's what I learned. So I learned something that I didn't know there were multiple scenario designers in Frosthaven, but now I know. So,
then I played, Dorf, I always mispronounce Dorf Romantique, tile placement game. We played with Tom and Jenna. They came over a couple weeks back before they were moving, so we had a last kind of hang out with them, played some games, and then the other night I ambushed Nicole with a game of Carcassonne. I just set it up while she was upstairs, and she came down. We had talked about maybe playing something, but I was like, I'm just gonna set it up, and then I was like, oh, now we got to play. So played a game of Carcassonne with Nicole, because that continues to be in my top 10 games, and will probably be there for all of eternity. I don't see it getting knocked out.
Well, and low barrier to entry, right? Yeah, I think literally you having it set up what was she gonna do? Like, it's not like it's hard. It's not like low barrier.
It's like sit down and 20 minutes later we're done playing.
Yeah.
And then RPGs. So D&D campaign. I'm playing with Tom and Jenna and Matt and Elena. We've been off a couple weeks for their Japan trip, and then Tom and Jenna moving, but we're gonna get going again Sunday. But then Dr. Gabe at Adaptations pitched a game to Paul and I, And we're like, yeah, we're in. Let's find a group. So we got our friend Ben from our mage group and kind of the that plays with Paul and I, and then one of Gabe's friends in the St. Louis area, Keith, and then supposedly Brian Nero will be joining us, and we're going to try to do a once a month game of Pendragon 6th edition. So Arthurian Knights did a session 0 where we created our squires and kind of Gabe explained how it works. We did what he called the Gygaxian character creation method, where everything is random, rolling from a table. Oh. So like basically rolled stats up in order, rolled traits up in order, rolled on tables for family history stuff and background stuff. So completely randomized knight, and then had some fun playing with like ChatGPT's AI imagery and creating like a house. So we had our first session and the squires were sent on a mission to investigate a dispute between 2 sheep farmers, and then learned of a pending Saxon like war party coming. So it was pretty fun. Yeah, I think it's going to be enjoyable. It's a good group of players, and it was fun to play in a game with Gabe. And Gabe and I are also doing like, I think 2, maybe 3 Pendragon games at Gen Con that we bought tickets for. So we are
you guys will be pros. Yeah,
we are all in on being valorous knights in the pursuit of restoring the one true king to the throne of Britain. So I don't know have you ever had an exposure to Pendragon?
No, I was just going to ask you, like, I don't even know, like, what is the core mechanics? Is it?
So
20 D20.
So it's a 20, but how it works is you have your knightly traits, and one might be like just, and the other is cruel, and it's a sliding scale. It can never get higher than a score of, I think, 18, or it might be 19, and then you have to roll under that if you're trying to do that thing. So like if I'm trying to be valorous and my valor is a 13, I roll a d20, I have to get under a 13, and the closer I am to a 13, the better my roll. So like rolling a 1, which is way under, is like, nah, you barely made it. But rolling a 13 is a critical success if my trait is a 13. So and then it's also it's easy to die, like very easy to die. So like damage and how that works, and so combat is deadly. So you end up it's also a generational role-playing game. Like you'll end up playing the heirs, like your family's sons, and playing generations, because every session is the equivalency of 1 year, and then you have a winter where you like level up and change your skills and stuff, and then another event happens, so that the clock is moving rapidly, versus like if you were to play a session and then it's the week later of downtime. No, it's like a full year of downtime between those events. So you're playing like those historically significant moments in the session, and then going through the time change.
Cool.
It was, I mean,
and it's been around a while, right? Well, you say 6th editions, right? But even that, right? First edition was quite a while, right? It came out many years ago.
It's been a long. I think it probably came out of the 80s. Like, if I think about what I saw from it. So we're gonna get another session going pretty soon, where we're gonna have that battle at the marsh against the Saxons. I guarantee one of us will die, if not multiple, just given what I've seen of the combat rules. Like, you get hit and it's questionable if you're going to survive. So that's gaming. Then how about some hobby? How are we enabling future gaming with hobby progress?
Sure. And I talked a little bit about it. I spoiled it. My big one is I did all the White Dust stuff, so a bunch of 3D print, and then had to get some paint on them. So at least got them primed, and then I just put a kind of white dry. It's supposed to be snow, so I just did white dry brush to start. But now I'll go back over and I'm going to do a little bit of. There's wood parts, and I'll hit them with a wash. I'll probably hit them with a wash and then go back over it with another kind of snow version or something to do that. So
very cool.
And then the other thing is Ben and I have this goal to play Legions Imperialis at Gen Con. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should actually have
some minis.
So I started getting my little tiny infantry guys kind of primed, and they're still on the sprue, but on the primed. And then over here, you can't see over here, I have all the different kind of miniatures I've collected for Legions Imperialis over how many years that game's been out, almost 3 years now or something, to try and figure out like an actual army list of what I should put. I think I think you need to have, everybody says you got to have like some infantry. I mean, I would be like, how many, can I just do all vehicles like a full armored company? I think you can do like an armored company, but I think everybody says it's nice that you need to have some kind of troops. So I think I'm going to have
hold some ground.
Otherwise you can't really, killing some of that stuff. But I have a lot of vehicles, and I think we're going to throw a Titan in there so that I have less to paint. So that's the goal. Yeah. So started that plan. So I'll continue we'll see. What do we got? July, August. So we'll see the next 2 episodes.
Yeah.
We'll find how close, I guess.
We have a couple episodes before then and a couple months, I think roughly under 60 days, but I, for reasons that I'll talk about in a little bit, have been focused on some Trench Crusade assembly and strategizing, and then also I took some Relic Blade minis out. They're metal, so I'm trying to get back into working with those.
Nobody works with metal,
and getting it to work. So I also sent a request to one of my local union 3D print shops, Koopman Industries, and said, hey, do you think you could try printing this stuff? Because it's like what the terrain that you need for the Caverns of Cural, which is like the single player Relic Blade campaign. Single player or co-op, you could like use one group and play through it against either against the GM type player or against the AI. But I want to get Relic Blade on the table here in the near future. So I've been working on that.
Yeah, you've got me excited, and that I'm gonna buy in. I keep saying I was gonna wander into Old Guard one of these days, because I assume they'll have it, because they kind of have all that kind of weird stuff.
They should have it.
They should have it.
You should be like, hey, why don't you have it?
Why don't you have it? Yeah. So I was holding off from buying it online, because I'm like, I'm going to go to Old Guard and give them some money for it is my plan. But I may just end up grabbing some stuff online.
But yeah, let's talk, Kickstarter, GameFound, other crowdfunding platforms. What it appears you may have been busy.
No, I just put this stuff for you to react to, Ty, is what I really did. I think so. Check out the Sin Eater. So this came across my my email. This game from, I think it's, who's doing this one?
It's
Hunter. So this is this is our friend in Hunter's book. So that's what kind of got me. But it is a really interesting game called Sin Eater, and I think it still has 19 days to go. So when you're listening to this, probably still has about 2 weeks if you listen to us right away. And again, we're recording this on June 5th. So but Sin Eater is a haunting solo tabletop role-playing game that plunges you into the wretched world of sin eating, a real historical practice wherein an individual was hired to consume the sins of the dead into their own soul through the consumption of a ritual meal near the body. So that just looks weird. And then on this Kickstarter, they've gone all out to really create some really interesting artifacts and books and journals, because it's a solo game. So you're journaling and the art. I mean, I looked at this and I'm like, it's really cool, but it's just like a little too dark for me, but it would be, but the stuff is pretty cool. But so there, Ty, I filled for a little bit to let you absorb it a little bit and react.
Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. I see YouTube video inspirations is Dark Souls and Bloodborne, so very, very dark and gothic. Other very cool thing is it appears that the I'm reading the founder of Atticus House Studio behind Sin Eater, named after a beloved yet very dead cat, former Games Guide writer for IGN, stand-up comic, official Words with Friends trivia show host, contributing writer for Cracked.com, brand director at Hero Forge, very cool, perpetual Dark Souls defender. Sin Eater is her first serious foray into game design. So female creator, first game, and looks dark. This looks like twisted dark.
I know. And it's a solo game, so you're by yourself in the darkness, like nobody to pull you out of that. But yeah, so I saw it and I'm like, oh, and then I started looking at it. I'm like, oh, this is, I wanted to at least share it with some people because I thought it might
also uses a coin flip mechanic, attempt to maintain equilibrium among the 4 essences that will make or break your ritual. So neat.
Yep.
All right. Well, that'll be one to watch. Then, looks like there's some cool YouTube stuff out there, like Learn to Play, and somebody is doing a solo play, like live play.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. So if you're into that kind of thing, jump in and support them. Or even if you're not, if you just really want some cool stuff, I think there's something to say for you can just buy this cool stuff and never really play the game, but lots of cool stuff in there. So the second one was, again, I was tempted to, this one actually finished, but you can late pledge. This is a 3D print one. It's called Hellwick Part 2 because they did a Part 1. But again, I wanted to put this on there for you, Ty. Like, this is like a huge,
incredible terrain.
Incredible. Like, you could do a whole table. Yeah. This is like a cathedral. I'm trying to describe it. It's probably, I think it doesn't quite, it's probably like 3 by 5, I think, when you put it all together, like 3 layers. Like, there's a complete dungeon layer that you're laying on top of this. The amount of 3D, this whole 3D model thing that this guy built is pretty incredible.
And it's built in 8 blocks that you can rotate and change. Yep. So like roads connect and tunnels. It looks like it has the catacombs underneath. There's multiple levels underneath. So it's like stackable for like doing a D&D.
Yep. Right. You can, I could see this where, like, if somebody had the group and a little bit of the time, you run your printer for a few weeks straight, and pull this together, and then you could literally have this cathedral in town that you could run probably, a pretty decent probably campaign right in. If
the level of detail is insane too.
Yeah.
Like the scroll work on the ceilings and the windows and banisters. You'd need a really good printer to get that detail without it, like.
Yeah, I think you could do. I think he said you can do everything FDM, regular, whatever. But there may be some things that you might want to do. You could do resin just to get a little bit better.
The cobblestone streets are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I was almost tempted to just like, oh, it's not that, like, just to have it in my back. But I'm like, I'm never gonna, like. I was like, hold it. I have a Space Hulk board where I did this, but but again, really cool, and it was tempting to like, ooh, this would be kind of cool just to have, and maybe even just because I'm like, oh, just that cathedral, like just to print the cathedral and have that as
or just to print the crypt.
Yeah, right. And it's not that. I think it's less than $100 maybe to get in for. It's under $100 to get you have to do the printing, but the models themselves, which are, again, you're getting this, I don't even know, it's probably
and then it has like caverns, the underworld underneath. It looks like it's like 4 feet tall.
Yeah. And then the cathedral itself is another, 2 feet off so I thought it was really cool. Figured I'd throw it in there. And then the last one
so far.
And then the last one is
3 for 3.
If you're not, this one you probably should be in, Ty, is Blades in the Dark, game we talked about a little bit, and this is motivating me again because we have the spin-off show that Ty and I have done that hasn't ever been really released, where we talk about a few RPGs, one of those being Blades in the Dark. But Blades in the Dark, they have an I'll call it expansion, 120-page expansion called Deep Cuts. That gotta get his name right, John Harper.
John Harper,
yeah, and just kind of dives in a little. If people, again, Deep Cuts, so taking kind of that world of, you're kind of doing kind of the heist kind of mechanics. We've talked a little bit about what Blades in the Dark is, really kind of cool. I always say, you don't always have to do heist kind of stuff, but that there's some, kind of that fantasy heist kind of mechanic, and there's some really cool flashback mechanic to help you kind of do some things that are cool. But yeah, just so it adds another set of more rules to kind of dive deeper around different lore, new crew members and things
27
like that.
factions, 100 heritage and background packages, 13 in technology innovations to reflect ongoing industrial age advances. And then the second part of the book is 6 modular rule systems. So updates harm and trauma, advancement system, diceless downtime, modified load system, more tied to the faction while remaining simple and easy to use, and a new action system, overhauls and streamlines the action resolution mechanics. Pretty cool.
So that one I might get you in, Ty. That one you might throw your money at. I don't know if I did or not. I think I did. I'm trying to think if I did it. That one might be one I think I did.
Yeah, this looks like a no doubter. $12.
Yeah, I think for the PDF version.
To download the game, purchase at or above the minimum price of $12. Yeah. That's a no doubter. Well done, Troy. Good crowdfunding hunting for the episode.
I had a I won't give my secret away, but I actually what I did is we actually prepped for this episode, in that when I would see stuff, I would add it right away to the notes so that I wasn't trying to remember stuff at the last minute about what we did. So,
yeah.
This is what our listeners get. This is what 92 episodes. Like, oh, maybe we should do a little bit of things. So listeners appreciate that. Like, you're getting the A game.
Actual planning.
Yeah.
It's every 91 episodes before this were 100% improv. With no
or at
prep.
Least 94%
improv. Let's talk a few other items of geekery. I'll start before yours, but so I had a wedding anniversary back in May, and my wife continues to find actually thoughtful, great gifts. And this year, this was one of them. Still in the Noble Knight bag, but it's the third printing of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, the one with the idol on front. So the first edition. I haven't taken it out of the bag yet. I'm trying to find like a cool like shadow box type thing to display it in, or frame it. So I probably won't ever actually like open it and read it. It's in pretty good condition considering. I mean, it's worn, but so that was pretty cool. Added that to the collection. So for those of you listening, check out YouTube because I showed the cover of it.
Yep. And we hope everyone knows what a second edition Player's Handbook cover looks like, but maybe not.
So what you found something here. It looks like maybe a mainstream.
So
dungeon
again,
experience.
Ty, I just keep finding stuff for you to react to. So I know YouTube somehow knows. Again, it does, right? Because they're spying on everything I do.
Yeah.
But so Universal Studios, what I found, what I didn't know this even existed. So they are doing, and maybe it's because did they have the D&D movie? I don't know who has rights for D&D, but so I called it to troll Ty a little bit. I said Universal Studios True Dungeon. It's not really True Dungeon, but what they did at Universal Studios is there's this experience that you go through that looks a whole lot like, I mean, you're basically you're not playing a character and doing combat, but you're going through. They have this cool kind of scenario where you're going to different scenes, and there's NPC, people that take you through the scenes, and they're telling a story in a D&D. Waterdeep. They're basically, you're in Waterdeep because you have, I can't remember who's the beholder, who's the Thieves Guild guy, but Xanthar or whatever his name is. So he's part of the story. They have some pretty cool animatronic kind of things in there. I don't know if you watched I can throw the link in the notes for people, or if people can look around, but somebody filmed it as they went through it, and it was pretty, and it just made me think, I'm like, oh yeah, this is
how it's supposed to be. Good acting, good props.
I mean, you're not doing, you're not interactive, like you're not fighting, but I don't know, I feel like that's not you're getting you're getting entertained. That's the thing. So so I'm just finding stuff for you, Ty. That's my
man.
And so, although I was, because
like Christmas,
we have been, like, I haven't been to Universal Studios in decades, but we have been kind of looking to say, like, that might be our next, rather than do a Disney trip, we might kind of do a Universal Studios. And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh, yet another reason to maybe do a Universal Studio trip. So
very cool. Well, mine, Troy, is not Universal Studios production, but it is some Goonhammer news. Yep. So
they pay us. No, they don't really pay us, but they're the parent company. I don't know.
Our media,
they're also our friends,
our media overlords and friends. So friend of the show and one of the head Goonhammer folks, Raf Cordero, hit me up recently and said, hey, I've got an idea that I want to do, and we're doing this thing for our Patreon's members, or our patrons over at Goonhammer. Would you be interested? I said yes. I didn't need him to fill in like the what it was that he wanted me to do. But we have a new podcast. It is currently a Patreon exclusive show for Goonhammer patrons. But Raf and I, the first episode released on Monday of the Campaign Trail. It is our short form, kind of 30 minutes, monthly episodes where we talk about campaign style gaming. We kind of did an introduction, talked about some of our favorites and early exposure into campaigns, and talked about like legacy gaming and D&D, and then the focus being kind of Relic Blade, Trench Crusade, some of the stuff that we're currently into now, and where we go with that. Early comments were, you said you're going to do an introduction, then you did an introduction, and you only did that. You should talk about Crusade. I mean, it's really fun to see kind of where we're going to get feedback.
I did. So I will admit, I did not listen to the whole thing yet, Ty, and we'll talk about probably why, because of what other things I'm listening to, whatever. But I did have to pop it on and start it, and then when I went on the page, I happened to. I guess that means I need to put some comments on there. Maybe they'll be worse. I don't know if I'll be better. If I can, should I balance them, or should I be?
I mean, it's great. Like, it is what it is. So
people are engaging. They just right. It's all positive. All engagement is positive, right? Yeah.
No, and I think it's a cool opportunity. It was fun to sit down and record with Raf and just kind of talk about something we're both passionate about. It'll give us a chance to kind of dive a little deeper into Trench Crusade and Relic Blade and Mordheim, some of the other things, what we're doing, what our plans are for campaigns and whatnot. So the Campaign Trail, Goonhammer, Patreon exclusive. Someday they may, we, once it's far enough into the future, kind of release the catalog, but something new and something fun.
If you're not a Goonhammer patron, it's whatever, $5 a month, I think, at their whatever level. Great. Again, we're biased. We're totally biased, but we were Goonhammer patrons before we were part of the Goonhammer Media Network. Around that, again, always that's just a great site, great content. We've gotten to know a lot of the people behind the scenes there. They've all been great people around some of that. And so I'd have no problem giving them a little bit of money to keep that everything that they're doing afloat. And again, everything where you get back, you're getting if you're any of their apps that they have out there, that you're using or thing. I mean, you're getting a lot of value for, even if you're not reading all their content. There's a lot of value out there for your $5. So.
Absolutely. So yeah, so that's fun and new, and I think we're recording the next episode here in the next week or so, and then we'll release that, and maybe someday we'll talk about Crusade.
Yeah,
it's going to become our bit. I think every episode we're gonna end and say next week we should talk about, or next episode talk about Crusade.
We'll talk about Crusade. Yeah,
and then just keep kicking the can down the road. Yeah, let's talk library. Throw open the doors, walk down the steps. Remember when we used to do the noise and Games Booze and the art of with the creaking door and the steps, the walking downstairs when we?
I think it's section. I have it somewhere. I feel like I snuck it in. Listeners may know, because I feel like I actually snuck it in an episode of some time back. Like I did, like I found it and I dropped it in, like whether people were noticing or not. I didn't do it. I haven't done it recently, but I believe
scavenger hunt. Go find the episode where Troy snuck in the old Games Booze and the Art of library segment audio. And see if you can go find the old Games Booze and the Art of podcast on iTunes.
They're still, I think they're still floating out there on iTunes.
Or don't, because
all
right. So what have you been consuming?
I don't know what order to do this in. I'll just do it in the order I have it here, because it's it. So made it through The Last of Us season 2. Man, that show took me for a ride. Like I had to prepare myself each week just to watch the episode, and then it would be like a day to kind of like. Luckily, they have the HBO podcast, so usually I would listen, and then the next day I would listen to Troy Baker and Craig and the other the writer, and I can't remember the real actual guy who wrote thing, but they would kind of then talk me off the ledge for the episodes and some of that. And I had never, so unlike Last of Us, where I was very familiar with the game, Last of Us 2, I had never really either viewed or knew a whole lot about the second Last of Us 2. I knew a little bit. I had watched a little bit of playthrough, but not through only maybe the first 20%, 10-20%. So around that. So yeah, so I can't imagine for people who so I was one of those people didn't really know what was going to happen. And again, it sounds like they also have changed up a lot of stuff from like they even did first season.
Yeah.
On that. But again, I won't, and no spoilers, whatever. I don't know anything will ever touch season 1. Like in my mind, that's in some ways the perfect thing. And that the second season 2 is just a little bit of a different thing. Not that it's good, bad, or whatever. It's still very good. I really enjoyed it. It'll be interesting to see. Again, it's one of those ones where I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, now spoilers is they have a third season. is they really split kind of the second game into two seasons here.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Although again, it's almost like I'm trying to think I could be done too. Like I don't know that I would even need to watch season 3. Like I'm good. Like I don't know. Although I will probably just to figure out how do they actually wrap things up. But I don't know if I need to. Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, it's different. So sorry, you're getting my therapy because I literally have to.
No, it's
It was there. This is a rough. That was a rough season. But it's what you love it, but you hate it because it was just
Yeah, I'm ready for Pedro to take a role, where he doesn't end up like Joel or Martell. Like, now maybe he makes it through the Mandalorian. I haven't watched all of the Mandalorian, so I'm hopeful maybe that's the one where. But even then, he's got the helmet on all the time. So is it really Pedro?
Yeah. I will, and again, no spoilers, but for people who've watched, I will say you go through it. There's some really rough whatever, and then they give you episode 6, and you're like, man, that is so like, and then though you're gonna like, all right, you've lived through 6. Now they're gonna pull the rug out from underneath you, and of course they did in the season finale. But kind of like, although it's still not, I've talked about before, episode 3 of the first season in my mind is one of the best episodes of television ever in the world, like ever. 6 tries to get close, but it's different, doesn't quite. But I think that it is interesting how they gave you a little bit. That was kind of the payoff for the season was episode 6. So sorry for people who haven't watched it, whatever, but hopefully you'll get it if you haven't watched it. So, but yeah, incredible. I can't. And listening to Craig, the writer, I always love the creative process behind it, and listening to how he, what did he do to adapt? How did they move from, and maybe this is leading into what we're a little bit of as we talk about, we're, adapting in our main topic later, but it's really interesting always to, like, how is he taking the stuff from the game and how do you adapt it to TV? How does that,
right? In
some ways there's constraints there, but now there's also elements that free you up to do different things that are in the game. I just find that so interesting to their thought process of how they made it through that. So,
all right. Then
on a lighter note, and I say Murderbot. So if you're not familiar with Murderbot, all systems red. I should know her name.
Martha Wells.
On Apple TV. Amazing. Like they're doing a great job. When we saw the trailer, we're like, oh, I think they might have got the idea of this. And really, the only thing is the episodes are too damn short.
Yeah,
too short. They're
only
too
watched
short.
The first one.
I would wait until the whole thing gets rolled out, because they're on a weekly thing out, but they're too short because they're only half-hour episodes.
Yeah, so you get like 25 minutes of content.
Yeah, you don't, and the story is moving pretty fast, and so it's not like you're never really getting good. I'm not getting good satisfaction. I shouldn't say that. Loving it because the characters are good. They're doing such a great adaptation of the book. They got the tone right and everything. But now I'm in it, so now I'm like, well, I really don't want to wait. I'm gonna, as soon as that episode drops, I think on Friday, so tomorrow, I think I might get another one. And so I will be there watching it, and then I'll be disappointed again when it's over in 25 minutes. But again, I've read there's 7 books in that series. Hopefully, even if you like the TV show, go grab the books, enjoy it. You're going to get a lot of that. And I haven't dived deep into it. What I noticed is on the thing is, they have, it looks like they at least have the right. I mean, they say based on All Systems Red, which is the first book. What I don't know is, did they get rights for the whole series, or did they just get rights for the first book and then they'll kind of spin off? Because as they go through the series, she introduces some more characters that are really kind of crucial, and how Murderbot, how he evolves through the series is pretty good. So
I've only listened to the first book. And the main reason why is because I feel like using a whole credit for them is a ripoff on Audible, because they're relatively
short. They're novellas. The initial ones are novellas.
Yeah.
I think she did do a full-length novel for like the 5th book now or something in that series.
But that's really the only reason why, because I'm like, oh, using a whole credit for 7 hours.
Yeah, I think you gotta look for a sale, and I would just buy them on cash, because they can usually find them for under $10 sometimes on a sale. For that. But again, I'm a fanboy. I totally love them. There's something, it's just, again, I'm a sucker for a non-human protagonist. And just and authors who can kind of do, and Lucky, when she did stuff for that on her books too. I don't know, something about me, I really kind of like that non-human protagonist.
Have you looked at, Martha Wells wrote a kind of like a hard fantasy called The Witch King. I haven't read it yet, but I'm intrigued.
It's on my list somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Then still watching Solo Leveling anime. I talked a little about that. I got through the first season, starting the second season. Kind of, I don't know. It's kind of, it's not funny. It's kind of deep, and can get a little dark, but light. And although I'm trying to figure out after first season if the main character has a little bit of the is it Mary Sue? They call it Mary Sue complex, or kind of where he is like he's gone from like a total scrub to kind of super powered, and so now it'll be interesting. How do they make it interesting? And that, like, because
there's no risk,
right? It's enough risk, and there was a point in first season where he did kind of get beaten and have to turn around that, but and part of that I think is that's the interesting part of the journey is here's a guy who, was the weakest of the weak and had and was kind of that, and it is interesting because now he's become that, and it's an interesting character study because he, unlike some of there are others like super people in the world, like that, and I think they're doing a good job of like kind of here's a person who came from nothing, and so he has maybe less of an ego and his a little bit more of a understanding, whereas you see these other people who have been super powered from the beginning and they're kind of assholes kind of thing, kind of it's kind of a cliche kind of thing, but they are using that, and so that's what does make it interesting. That's I think why people kind of have recommended that series. So again, it is anime, it's not super deep, but there's enough there that it's keep me interested, and some really cool fights and dungeons and things like that in that world. So, and then
is that on Netflix or Prime or?
It's actually Crunchyroll. I think I have a Crunchyroll.
Okay.
I got Crunchyroll on Prime.
Okay.
Which is like, I don't know. I think you could do it free because I think they do like a free, I don't know, it's 1 week or 2 weeks that you can get. Otherwise, I think it's only $5 or $6 a month or something like that. So I don't know that I'll keep it, but I think if there's something to watch, then I'll have it and then turn it on and off. So, and finally, and this will be where we'll overlap, Ty, because then we can go right in. Is I am. I don't know how long, I'm probably 60% of the way, maybe a little bit more, through The Devils, Joe Abercrombie, his latest book.
It's about where I am.
Where are we? We're in June. It's my book of the year so far in 2025. And I'm only 60% through. Love it. Makes me laugh. I can't tell you how many times I have laughed out loud in the car or walking around with headphones on by myself.
So what scene you can just name a scene. What was the last scene that kind of you were at?
I am at is it the third? It's the fight just after the fight with the third cousin. Or
okay.
Yeah, right. That's her cousin. Yeah, I think, right. But yeah, totally enjoying that. And then bonus is thanks to you, Ty, back in the day when I think you were the one that noticed it first, was like, hey, Joe Abercrombie is coming to the US on a book tour, and he's going to be in the Chicagoland area around Memorial Day. I can't go. And I'm like, I'm there. And so whatever that was, 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Yeah, I get it's all a blur. So Memorial Day weekend, went down to Naperville, Illinois, which is as we were talking about Raf in our friend's Raf's neighborhood, and went to a book signing with Joe Abercrombie, and actually a talk. They did like a talk with Joe Abercrombie, and then Pat Rothfuss, who, if you don't know Pat Rothfuss, Name of the Wind, lives in Wisconsin here. He was actually kind of the interviewee. It ended up, again, if you know Pat, it was more of like Pat and Joe talking for an hour about different things and whatever they talk about. So very entertaining, a lot of fun, and then got to meet both, and as you go through the line, and got books signed and did that. So and ended up being a beautiful day on a Saturday. I went down there, and I didn't realize in downtown Naperville is actually pretty cool. Really, it's lots of restaurants, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time, but just kind of walking around. We were at North Central College in Naperville, which is there because they had so many people around there. And I will call out, so it was done by Anderson Books. They're like a local bookstore in Naperville there. I think they have a couple other locations, Naperville, whatever. They've been around for, I don't know, 100 years or something like that. They have a Barnes and Noble like a block away from they have them, but again, support Anderson Books. After I got done, I did make a point to walk the 2 blocks over there. I wanted to really cool little bookstore. Lots of cool stuff over there, and got on their mailing list, and definitely will support them as I can, because love these local bookstores that are doing things. Again, we wouldn't have these signings and talk about they do this a lot. They have a lot of author things like that. They knew how to run an event. They knew how to organize people. They knew how to get the lines moving. I can't think of anything that didn't go right, and that just goes to that group and how much they've done it and really had it down to a T. Because it is kind of like you're moving cattle. You got to figure out how to organize all these random people that have maybe some of them never done it before and things like that. So they did just an amazing job, and so it was I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I remember years ago Pat Rothfuss is in Milwaukee, and Boswell bookstore up on UWM's campus did it, and it was at the union, the UWM like student union, and then they organize it though and do all the stuff. So like, excellent. Well, I've also been listening to The Devils. Stephen Pacey is at his finest in the narration, the storytelling, the performance that is all of the characters. And yeah, it is just truly a great time. Like, there's a good mix of battle and humor and emotion, and like even characters that you wouldn't think you would feel sympathetic for. Like, you feel sympathy for, given how the sorcerer, the magician Balthazar, just not where he wants to be,
right?
Not able to control his own destiny or freedom, and not a good person at all, self-interested, selfish, but you still you feel sympathy for his situation. But anyways, Abercrombie continues to be just one of the best authors writing today.
And we'll have to talk afterward, because you made me laugh, because you literally made me think about a scene that I just went through with our friend Balthazar the magician, and where he had enough, and it's so good. And I will just say again, no dispersion, Ty. I hope you're not, but you're listening to a Stephen Pacey book 1.0. There's no you listen at normal speed. There's no fast forwarding, or no, just saying that's how it's done. Mm-hmm. If anybody else wants to do it, you're a heretic. That's all. So, that's why it takes me a little longer to get.
I may still do 1.1, but that's why I
try.
I know that
1.1. I know that 1.1 wouldn't matter, but I just don't. I'm just like, it's a Stephen Pacey. I'm doing.
I usually do 1.2 for most stuff. Exactly. Some things I go 1.4 if I really am just trying to power through.
Yep.
But yeah,
I'm with you. But I just go, if it's Pacey, I'm like 1.0. That's what I'm doing.
Speaking of great audiobooks, I also finished The Inevitable Ruin. So Dungeon Crawler Carl, book 7. Can't remember if I talked about finishing that, but Jeff Hayes, the narrator for that, he's just incredible. The voices he does and the inflection, and like it's abnormal, like superhuman levels of voice acting that he does, and the voice changes. Like, it reminds me of like when you would see Hank Azaria doing The Simpsons and the different characters, or other, just when you think like, voice actors like the Matt Mercers and the Laura Baileys, and like that, like just incredible range. And it actually brought me back to being I'm a fan of Dungeon Crawler Carl, but books 4, 5, 6, I started to be like, okay, I'm just doing this because I want to do this. Book 7 was really fun, and I really had a good time with it again, which was nice. And then I read, so are you familiar with Stephen Graham Jones? He writes, he is, he wrote The Mongrels, and I think it's Only the Good Indians. He's an indigenous author. And some of his books talk about it's supernatural. He's a horror writer, and there's always some element of either reservation life or myths and legends of indigenous peoples. His newest book that just came out is called The Buffalo Hunter, and it is told through, so it starts with like she's a anthropology or archaeology like lecturer, and she gets a journal that's sent to her. The microfilm is sent to her that was found inside the walls of an old church that was torn down by a construction worker, and it turns out to be like her great grandfather, who was a Lutheran pastor in, I think, Montana, and it's his journal. But as you read, it is him writing about this man dressed in a black robe who comes wearing shaded lenses and tells him a story of these hunters that were killed on the plains, buffalo hunters that were left and their faces painted and like flayed and left like the buffalo had been left when they would take their hides. And over time, I'm not spoiling anything, it's a vampire story. And you start to find out that this is he is an indigenous man who probably some 40 years ago was involved in this battle between soldiers where there was a caged, he calls it the Catman, this caged Catman creature that ended up his blood going into like him as he lay there dying, and he woke up healed and was basically had to feed. And then it just goes through as this guy will come after the guy's sermon, and he writes and records his confession, and things happen. And it's this kind of dark retelling of what happened to the Blackfeet tribes in the Montana area in the 1870s. But really good. Like, I tore through it. I read it so fast. And it was one that Nicole had actually, she's read a lot of Stephen Graham Jones's stuff, and had bought that one, and I read it before she did, but I was like, oh, this sounds like something that I can get into. So really big fan of it. I think I only gave it 4.25 on Storygraph because I was being a little like, usually I would have been like, oh, it's a 4, but I was like, it's better. It wasn't quite a 5, but there's some twists and turns and things happen. Then have you heard of the book Fantastic Land?
Nope.
So Fantastic Land, for those of you at home, is defined as kind of like the current Lord of the Flies. Like in the vein of Lord of the Flies and Battle Royale, Fantastic Land is it's a fictional place, but it's a adventure theme park like a Disney World that opens in Florida on the coast. And there's a massive hurricane that blows through, and the owner had staff that would volunteer to get like hazard pay if they stayed during the course of any natural disaster. And like, we're in a storm shelter. What happens is the park, Fantastic Land, gets totally cut off, and the rescue efforts don't get to them for like a month or two, like a long time. But it's told kind of like how Max Brooks wrote World War Z, like through news.
After the
it's interviews and people telling their side or what they saw. And like a chapter will start and it'll be like, so-and-so retail manager at the shops on, parade dance troupe, guest relations, pirate, like the faction. So there's like a Pirates of the Caribbean area, and staff, when they come out of the storm shelter, they're all in late teens, early 20s. Like, you think a resort run by college students and summers, and bad things start happening. And then it goes to this, like, what is the tribalism when there's no technology, there's no supervision, there's no way out.
What do humans do? Right?
What is this dark side of human nature? So like it's really good. Like I think I read about 150 pages last night. Like, I'll probably finish it tonight or tomorrow. Like, brutal. Like, you know, things happen and you're like, geez. Like, I remember reading William Golding's Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
Like, it's kids, so you're like, this is incredibly brutal.
Yeah.
This is like teenagers, so you get that battle royale aspect, and but enjoying it. So Fantastic Land is my most recent one. And then I was going to talk Murderbot. Watched episode 1. Need to watch more of that, but we really enjoyed it. It was funny.
Yeah.
Well acted. So
yeah, they did such a good job there. So, but wait and just binge it. I think that's the key.
Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. We're really enjoying a lot of stuff on Apple TV. We're also most of the way through Your Friends and Neighbors with John Hamm. And I can't remember now. There's another show coming. I think that looks good. It's like Taron Egerton is a detective researching like arsons. Looks kind of like a dark, not like True Detective, but just kind of like a darker crime drama. All right, that's the library. So that was I went a little deeper too on some of the books, but I'm trying to relive the book club experience that we don't get anymore.
And we will. I think we'll have to see. It might be just you and I, Ty, but we will definitely have a book club after we finish The Devils. So.
The Devils, yeah, well worth it. We're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, we're going to go from page and screen to tabletop and talk a little bit about when our fiction and film informs our gaming. And we're back. Troy, what are we going to talk about here in this next segment?
So I pitched you an idea, Ty. I said, hey, let's talk about adapting, because I feel like we do this all the time. We talk about it. We get inspired by, again, we just got out of our library segment. We read a lot of stuff. We're watching movies. We're watching TV shows. And I think a lot of people that listen to us too, I think if you're a gamer, you like watch a movie scene or you read a book, you're like, oh, that would be so cool to do in an RPG, or how can I recreate that? Or couldn't we take some inspiration with that? And then I think we'll also talk about, I've to like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to fight this battle in your favorite miniature game? Or how can I adapt this and take it there? So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to talk a little bit. We're going to kind of dive in and talk about maybe things we've done or even just some ideas, things we'd like to do in both kind of the RPGs and maybe some of these things that are one shots or campaigns or things like that. And then also miniature games. We did that. Like, how can you take inspiration from anything too? And like, hey, how can I bring that to like my miniature table, and whether it's miniatures or scenario or something else like that. So hopefully, again, people find it interesting, but again, it feels like something we all do. We all do in some ways. And I think we can just share some things and maybe people can take something away from it, or at least inspire you to, next time you get the itch, here's a way that you can actually bring it to life on your table somehow.
Yeah. And I think, the first part of this is like the why, right? Why adapt something? And there's that concept, right, that there aren't any original ideas anymore. And although I don't truly believe that, I think there are certainly some very original ideas. Everything, I think, is informed by other things you've seen, even unintentionally.
Yeah.
I think when you read a lot of books and you watch a lot of films or shows, you start to, when your creative process runs, it's pulling from your experience. And part of your experience is what you've read, what you've watched. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I think that's kind of like that almost human nature of creative, like, process is drawing references or pulling things you like out. And also, I think you put some notes here. I'm going to steal one of them, is that there's a benefit to that. Like, the stakes are established. It works, right? If you have a really great battle scene, or you've read a really fantastic kind of introduction to a book, it works. Like, this is a great idea. This is exciting. This is interesting. So it lends itself to then, to inspire that same feeling from whoever you're playing that game with, or yourself if you're setting up, a scenario for like a tabletop miniatures game.
Yeah, and again, I'll pull on that, Ty, because I think there is something to, again, we're all informed, we're all kind of inspired by other things, but I think that's part of the creative part too, is how can you maybe take two things that don't maybe seem related, pull them together, or take something you've been inspired by, and I'm gonna flip something on its head. I think we'll talk about some examples maybe from. And maybe I'll use, we talked about in past where Dan Abnett's Double Eagle book, where it's a 40K book set in the far future. What that really is, he took a World War II story and he moved it into a different genre, kind of changed the things, but and that's what made it really cool, right? Why does it feel familiar? Because he took something familiar to us, but he put it in the 40K world and some of that. So I think that's some opportunity here is where you can be inspired by something, but maybe you're completely shifting genres or completely shifting kind of the game that might make sense. Somebody might make sense to like, oh yeah, that's how we're gonna do it. Like or some of that, because and we'll talk a little bit around, and maybe we will, right? Like there are some things, like there's something called historical miniatures that are basically they're not even inspired. They're like, hey, we're gonna take this real event,
we're gonna do the Battle of Midway,
we're gonna redo it, right, and something like that. So like there is a whole hobby that is kind of like we're gonna recreate these things here. We're talking about a little bit now. Hey, we're gonna take this and we're gonna extend it, or maybe jump genres or jump games or something else like that. So.
And I think where you've shared in the past about historical minis, sometimes like it's a little heavy too.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that one step removed from like doing something from a movie gives you that basis, but you don't have to like experience that kind of feeling of what actually like happened because of this battle and the loss. I think there are a couple experiences from role-playing games, both that I've participated in and ran, that I want to draw on as we talk a little bit further about this. And one that like I was thinking about, it felt like kind of an easy way to just capture a movie and translate it into a game. And so we've talked a lot about Outbreak Undead and kind of zombie simulation. And I remember a con game that it might have been called like House on the Hill, that was run with early kind of first edition Outbreak Undead, but it was kind of like a recreation of the house from I'm pretty sure it was Night of the Living Dead. Like if I think about the scenario and you're in this house and there's zombie hordes coming and you're trying to survive and escape. And it like to me that was, you had an instant location that was iconic to zombie films. You had a ton of like reference of what happened in the film that you could use as events, when they break through the door, when you're upstairs and they're in the house and you're trying to figure out a way out. Somebody gets bit inside, right? Like, and then is behind the closed door with you. Like all these things that happen translate almost perfectly into a one-shot kind of con experience game. And that's another thing where I think this idea of adapting films specifically, you think about the time that a film usually covers. It's not, most of the time it's not over several years. Obviously you have some films that do that, but it's about an event or a series of events in a time frame. And you think about how we play, a RPG like campaign or a series of adventures, and it's roughly, the cinematic capturing of events over a short and condensed kind of set of time. You may play for years and years and years, and that changes. But if you think about getting a short form campaign together, you're thinking kind of that 3-act structure, and it might be a few sessions to move through it. But there's kind of an easy corollary from the way narrative TV shows and films kind of set up that 3-act structure and how that lends itself to a role-playing game.
Yep. Yeah, and I think and you talked about, I think you in our notes here, you talk a little bit about, you're informed by kind of what you're reading on things, but I think it can be a scenario, can be a story, or it could just be a character, right? Or a protagonist or an antagonist. Like here's this really cool thing, and whether it's a dragon or a lich or a zombie, or again, jumping, genres and some things, like here's kind of this really evil kind of guy in maybe even a modern thing you read, and like, oh, what if I take him and make him kind of a fantasy warlord kind of, or he's the underboss or something like that. So I think there's a lot of inspiration you can kind of take even from just pieces, again, as you put it together around some of that. So
one other one that we've talked about, kind of the campaign that I've run for you guys over the last maybe 2 years. We were on a bit of a hiatus, but I had gone back and reread the Black Company, the mercenary group, and then I also had recently read some Malazan and like the Bridge Burners army, the Malazan Marines, and this concept of these small elite forces and these mercenary groups. So I was like, I think that would be a great like connection for a group to start an RPG campaign. I'm like, I've already got the world, I've already got the pantheon, the things. Like I want to take this and kind of run with it. So that was like the start was, okay, you guys are part of a mercenary company. Here's the captain. Here's what you're doing. Here's the job you're on. And it was kind of a way to like, not even events of the books, but just that idea. I was like, that would be a fun like group to follow and be a part of. So, it doesn't have to be a scene to that point. Sometimes it's just inspiration.
Right. And a cool seed. And again, I think that was a really cool seed again, it was different than you meet in a bar. It was, hey, you guys are part of this mercenary group. And it was cool how it kind of gave us a different kind of mindset about creating the characters and what does it look like and how do we put this band together. And actually that we were a small group within a larger group, at least when we started. And it was fun to watch as we went through the campaign, right? How did that evolve? How did the group kind of change and move through? But I think it was really cool how taking that idea, again, just created a new way to kind of start that campaign together.
And then in that campaign too, I remember we played a couple sessions where you guys had come upon that kind of mountain town that was under siege from the bandit army, and I played on that Magnificent Seven Samurai. Like, gave you guys a chance to train the townspeople, set up defenses, like get them ready to defend against this veritable army of bad guys that were coming over the course of a few days, and the battle scenes and the waves of enemies that came from it. But it was, that like I ripped that right out of one of my favorite Westerns, and Kurosawa, I mean, was great at creating that effect of the samurais, the Ronin that showed up to help those people defend against the invading army. So I have no problem borrowing, stealing, using whatever from movies, books, TV. What about some miniature gaming? So I think RPGs, it's
so
an easy.
I'm going to leave one, maybe I don't know if we want to. I was going to touch on before we leave RPGs. One more example I had, and I didn't write it in here, but way back when, so this was decades ago, and even not movies or books, we had a buddy of mine ran kind of, it was a short campaign. I think it was 2 or 3 sessions based on an album. He basically took, and again, you go way back, it was Genesis album in 1983. There's a song and there's a couple of songs there, but the one song was, there's a song in there called House on the Sea, and it describes kind of this house and whatever. We played a whole scenario around this house and trying to get in it and the mystery around it and whatever. So again, really interesting. Again, the inspiration came from a song. And it was cool too, is we basically, he could use that. He used that as a little bit of a soundtrack for the song. But again, kind of way, again, finding things to take inspiration from. I always remember, again, I remember it, whatever it's been, almost 40 years ago. around, hey, that was really cool how, and there were some clues, and basically we had to kind of listen to the song to get some clues about, okay, how do we actually get into this house, and what are we going to find there, and things like that. So pretty cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think music, certainly we left that out, but there's a lot to be said there too, and I think you see that in some of the work of some of the GMs, like what Joe Manganiello has done sometimes is informed by his enjoyment of various metal, and like I think Matthew Mercer borrows themes and things from songs at times. So it goes beyond TV and film to that point. Yeah. All right, miniature games. I love your first note here.
So I said, I mean, there are, as we talked about, again, you have historical miniatures. You also have, Games Workshop has Lord of the Rings miniature game. So if you want to recreate the Lord of the Rings movies, there's nothing we can do better than just like they created a whole game system, miniatures, and that whole game system
Pelennor Fields,
really,
Battle of Five Armies.
It's really built around all the different, like it's just, how do I recreate all the different iconic scenes from Lord of the Rings? They've got it right there. So again, that's pretty cool. How can you, again, it's Lord of the Rings, right? It's iconic. It's based, but the fact that they basically have done a lot of the work for you around that. And again, it's been many years since I've played it, but everything I heard is that's a pretty decent rule set. So, they keep updating it. It's fairly modern around that, and it really does. They do it to allow kind of that mix of heroic. You kind of have the heroes in there, where you have the hordes around that, and it's great. And I still remember this is one of the very early early Adapticons, and I can't remember who had, but somebody had done they had built the Helm's Deep kind of thing. We were playing kind of one of the early rule sets. This would have been really early in that, but man, again, so much fun, right? To have it right there, like to physically have it right there, and to have the hordes coming, and you're controlling the horde, but you have your little Legolas hero, and you had a hero and things, and again, that was probably almost 20 years ago, and it was just so cool.
Yeah, and I think that terrain, and like miniature wargaming, when you have good terrain and you have the painted units and stuff, where I'm really kind of enjoying this is on the flip side with like Marvel Crisis Protocol, and having the comics to inspire some of the battles, and like Josh taking Master Mold and creating the encounter given Trask Industries, and then I always think of Gen Con. I think was the first place I saw it. The Star Wars Battle for Hoth. The recreation of all the big walkers and the speeders, A-wings or whatever they are, that the scout speeders that like zip around and tie up the legs. But seeing those massive Star Wars battles in miniature game, where they recreated the Death Star, like the tunnel run in X-Wing. There's some really cool stuff that I've seen on the Star Wars front too, for recreating some of those battles.
Yeah, and maybe that kind of calls out again as we kind of call back. I think that's kind of the difference we talked between. We just talked about RPGs. I think sometimes the challenge on RPGs is like maybe Star Wars. Like, hey, let's do a Star Wars RPG, right? The trick there is it's really hard to do an RPG where like I'm not going to be Princess Leia and Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. Because it's kind of like their story's already been told, right? Like I could be in that world and I can do it, but in some ways, it can be a challenge to figure like, all right, how do we tell a different story? We're in that world. We're not retelling Star Wars and some of that, But when you're doing miniature gaming, guess what? We're going to retell, right? We're going to take those iconic events and we're going to retell them. We're going to do the trench run.
You might even have those iconic characters, right?
Right,
like
right. And you have and we just talked about, Lord of the Rings. I
Yeah.
have Legolas. I have, them on the table. And so I think that's what's kind of a little bit interesting if between doing these things as kind of an RPG versus a miniature game where you can do like a recreation of the actual battle. Whereas an RPG, sometimes you could be at that event, but you're like, oh, I'm a character at a bystander and why that event's happening. And maybe I'm telling a different story alongside that, right? But that story's already happened. So, but yeah, as you kind of say that, this made me just kind of think like, what is the cool part of the kind of doing this as a miniature event is you can pick it and let's and let's actually recreate it.
So you have a few examples here that I think are worth discussing. So other things outside of Star Wars and Middle Earth.
Yeah, and interesting. So some of this is again the genre hopping, right? And some of this is historical that went to a movie that went to something else. So I think we did something like this at a Gen Con event that we ran back in the 90s. On some of this and some other ones. But so the idea, if you ever seen We Were Soldiers, so that's the idea of if that is, I think it's Ladang or whatever, the Vietnam, basically a hot landing zone. They went in, the Vietnamese were attacking, and it was really like, hey, we got to hold this area. We need to get the choppers down to get our troops in to reinforce and things like that. And I think over the years, I've done a couple different scenarios where we've taken that into like a 40K kind of thing where it's like, hey, we need to, you need to survive through so many turns and then the Thunderhawk's going to land and you'll get reinforcements on this turn, or even just like throughout the battle on some of that. Or, hey, I have to defend, you basically have to defend the zone until so much time and that's your win condition. Again, kind of this asymmetric kind of thing, and done those as kind of different 40K events and some of that. Things like that. So again, that's an issue. Like it's historical, and it again inspired by a movie, but that movie is inspired by a historical event, and then you're taking it. But now I'm going to switch genres. We're not going to do it as a warlord. One of the warlord games. We're going to do it in 40K or something else around some of that. And then the other one is again kind of jumping way out is the Road Warrior, right? If the classic Road Warrior scene, he's got the semi, trying to get the semi full of the fuel to out, and that semi chase. And we actually played an event like this. We had the idea, and then a guy did it, and we played at the event at Gen Con. He took the Thunder Road rules, which are kind of very simple, but basically had a 3D board. He had modeled up the semi. And basically the Thunder Road thing was you had your kind of factions, but the idea was how do you get after the semi as it was trying to get through and doing the semi chase around that. And again, the guy had done it to the same. If you know Thunder Road, it's a rolling board. You kind of keep moving it. He actually had like a flexible, like he had done a tarp kind of thing, and so you'd roll one and then he'd pull the next tarp out and pull things around to kind of keep that chase scene kind of moving through, which was really cool. So
nice. If somebody wants to do this and recreate a scene or a campaign based on something, any advice? As we've done some of this, we've ran some campaigns, we've done some events, we've played in many. Anything that you'd recommend someone consider or do before they tackle this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? And again, if we look at kind of for RPGs or even miniatures, right? RPGs, I think there's certain systems that'll take a look and see what is the strength of that system. Does it lean toward what you're trying to recreate, right? Yeah. Around some of that, whether are you trying to do something really kind of dark and gory? Is it more gritty? What kind of makes sense around that to let the system do some of the work for you around some of that, because some systems are going to lean into certain genres and stories a little better than other ones.
You say that, and I thought of a pitch, so I have a pitch. Picking the right system.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, and again, the same thing on the miniature side, right? Again, there's ones that you can just buy off the shelf, as we mentioned, Lord of the Rings. But again, what is the, what is the game? What are you trying to kind of do, and what game system helps you kind of do that, right? Or a little bit of both. Is maybe like, hey, we're 40K players, we like the 40K things, and we're just looking for a scenario idea, right? And kind of pull that. And so on my next point, I'll kind of think that's a little bit different of some of that. But if there's, because we kind of, what's funny is like mixing system and idea John and I have had forever, is literally taking 40K orc vehicles and doing that, 35 millimeter scale Thunder Road, like basically taking a very, the Thunder Road mechanics, but doing them with orc vehicles at that scale. Because we really, again, we keep talking about it for a decade. I think now we've talked about it, but we're like, oh, we got to figure out how to make this happen at some point, because we think there's something there. So again, that's just one of those inspirations where you're kind of crossing genres, where you're like, hey, we think there's something here. We think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Around some of that. So
Gork's Thunder Road.
Yep. And then the other one is when you're actually playing it, like what are you trying to do? Because in the end, you want the game to kind of, the idea is one thing. It's always the hard part is then like, how do we make it a fun event or a fun thing to do? And are you trying to do something competitive, right? Where you do have two sides and there's some competitiveness around some of that. Again, so if you're doing any kind of an asymmetric scenario, making sure that that's kind of balanced, that can be kind of tricky, right? It depends. Again, a lot of it's what are the people at the table. Are you doing it as a con event or something else like that? In that case, you want to kind of do the play testing. You want to make sure you kind of have things in place to keep it competitive around that. If it's your friends around the table, you can kind of have an agreement like, hey, we're going to start this. If on turn 2 things don't look right, here's some things we can do to kind of like, let's keep it fun, right, around some of that stuff. So I think that's just a discussion you can kind of have.
And we've talked a lot about that social contract, and I think a lot of this kind of, it comes from that narrative forward rule of cool, like, hey, I want to try this, can I? Yeah, it sounds awesome, roll for it, versus like, a competitive like tournament style victory point. It's more, this obviously, all these ideas lend itself more towards that narrative open aspect than like a truly competitive angle. But I could see, you could try to add some balancing and take some time for it to, like, it can still, narrative gaming doesn't have to be non-competitive.
Yep.
It's just you look for the theme and the story events to carry the action, versus I'm trying to score this objective. Like,
yep. And again, you don't see it as much. I don't feel like you see it as much often, but where you actually do a miniature event with a GM, where again, sometimes that you might see it at like a con event, right? Like we kind of, that's our Space Hulk, right? That's how we kind of do that. But sometimes you don't see it a lot when it's like in your basement, when you're like, hey, you're going to run these two factions. We're actually going to play a semi-competitive game. But guess what? Josh is going to be here. He's actually going to GM the event, and he's going to have some things where he can create some events to create some balance, or he's going to say how things turn out when certain things happen, which can create some really fun miniature events. And when you go way back to kind of Rogue Trader area of 40K, that was their kind of idea. Like you look at that, people look at that rule set and they're like, oh my God, this thing is broken a million ways to whatever. That's because they never really intended it to be, it was not a competitive, it was idea. Like, here's a framework to have some fun, some stories. Maybe you have a GM who's actually kind of helping with some of that stuff too. And
you see that with like Apocalypse and even City Fight to some regard.
Yep. So I think that's a mode of play that people don't. Again, partly it's because you have to have somebody who's going to volunteer. Like, hey, I'm not going to play, I'm going to GM. But there's a lot of, I think you can have a lot of fun if you are the GM. Like, that can be a fun afternoon for you to do some of that and to help kind of do some of that. So, I think that's an interesting thing for one of these around there. And then the last one, and then, again, as we were talking earlier about kind of White Death, is maybe you're playing a co-op scenario with AI enemies, which can be a lot of fun, right? It can be a lot of fun because you're all against the game, right?
Right.
But again, you might have to do a little play testing. You might have to have some things in play to like, hey, because AI rules are AI rules, right? They may or may not be stuff, but again, if you're playing like a Zombicide, that it's kind of a proven system, kind of things like that, you can do some things. And again, that's like I said, we have some ideas like, oh, could we do like a really cool over the top castle siege with Zombicide rules and kind of things like that. And I think that's one of these ideas that's percolating in our head now around some of that, and that can be a lot of fun to do.
I think you already kind of touched on pick the right system, and that comes down to that consideration, right? Yeah. Like when you're thinking about what you want to do, you want to pick a game system that enables it, or be willing to flex the rules and adjust to fit kind of that mode of play. Well, should we try to excite each other with some pitches?
Sounds
good.
So
do you want the movie named, or do you just want me to give you the scenario and you try to figure out what it's based on?
No, well, it sounds like the latter now because you just said that. So,
all right. So it's a fantasy setting. Some type of powerful entity has basically made a threat against like a city, right? City government, that they're going to launch an attack or destroy it, and their base of operations is on this island that used to be a prison for like demonic entities and summoned creatures. So it's this super high security prison that has now become a fortress for this powerful entity that is threatened. Like, could be like Waterdeep, right? Or it could be, think like some type of big fantasy setting. And your group on this is quested, you're like given this mission from this city council to go and infiltrate this fortress and take out the powerful sorcerer.
Cool. Am I going with Escape from New York?
Oh no, but I can see that. I was going for Sean Connery, The Rock.
The Rock. Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to say The Rock is just a reimagining of Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, sure.
But no, you're right. No, they're different. Yep, I like. Yep.
So that's the quest. That could be a one shot. You've got to go to this prison off the coast and take down the
right. And again, you take The Rock and you put it in Waterdeep, right? Put it in a fantasy setting. Yeah, that would be a blast, right? Again, I'm bought in.
All right.
So I'm gonna do the miniature one. So this, and I'll give you the movie first for people because people aren't going to be maybe not as familiar with it, but because I want you to go watch the movie. So if you've never seen Zulu, this is like a 1969 movie, something like that. Might have been even earlier, 63 or the original. There's two movies, Zulu and Zulu Dawn. You watch Zulu actually happens. I think Zulu happens first chronologically from that, and a lot of people are familiar with Zulu. This is South Africa. The British were in there, down there. I think it's Rorke's Gorge, Rorke's something like that. So small group of British soldiers are in this farmhouse. The Zulu nation comes and they basically have to hold off a couple different waves during the night and whatever of the Zulu army attacking them around some of that. So again, this is an idea. John and I actually, I think a couple of years ago, maybe if you go back to an old podcast, we might have talked about some of that, but we've been continuing to kind of form this, but doing this as a 40K, you have some Space Marines on a table, kind of a cool kind of outpost on this thing. And then you basically have Tyranids coming in from off the board, attacking them. And actually we took some inspiration to White Dwarf had done way back in the day. They had done a scenario with kind of a framework or some rules for how do you do like some waves. And so the idea is, you kind of have, you basically, you have a set of group for the Tyranids that would attack. And then after they basically if they get to some point of losses, some percent of losses, they basically break and then they come away. And then the Marines get to like catch their breath. And then the next turn you play another wave of the next group come in. And if they can take out X percent, then they're going to break. And the idea is you're going to do, I think, 2 or 3 of those kind of waves. And that's kind of the win condition. Again, this idea that either they're going to get reinforcements or something else like that, to do that, to kind of recreate kind of this idea of that small elite force trying to hold off against the Ord. And then our friends, I believe, what has continued to kind of percolate with this idea, our friends at Goonhammer had kind of, I think they have a rule set floating out there from like a year or so ago to actually do like an AI Tyranid force, so that you could kind of play it as a truly co-op scenario where you're playing the Marines, and then you just have kind of AI rules for how the hordes are going to attack, and which you could, because the Tyranids are going to be pretty straightforward on some of that. So that's again the core of that is kind of looking at that Zulu thing, which again, if you've ever seen that movie, it just sticks with you for forever. I think Michael Caine, is kind of the guy in that. It just sticks with you. It's a crazy, because it is, again, it's a movie, whatever, but based on a real event that happened and back then. That but the idea of like, okay, this really sounds cool about, it's kind of that classic scenario of the small group of guys trying to hold off against whether that's zombies or Tyranids or orcs or something else like that. You can do some of that. So
now I want to see the number of Tyranids it would take though to make that happen. Like what's the point where that squad, but like what's the breaking point where that Imperial
to play with it to see where they get overrun? Yep, right. Yeah. I know, like it would be fun.
All right, so I've got another one, and this defies the rules of Pick the System, because I'm going to tell you the show, and then I'm going to go into how I would turn it into a campaign for a RPG. Firefly. Now, yes, there have been Firefly RPGs.
Yep.
Yes, there are plenty of sci-fi themed RPGs, but I'm gonna go a little bit outside here. Spelljammer campaign, where you are this kind of ragtag group of heroes going across the astral seas on a Spelljammer in 5th edition D&D, but so strongly themed on Firefly to the point where it is like episode for episode almost a recreation through your campaign. And you have the raiders, I forget, the Gith or whatever, like you have your Reaver type, you have these ports, these places you can get to where you can find safe haven and get the doctor and his psionic sister and like the preacher, like shepherd book. And I like, it's this one for one. I don't know why I would want to do it as Spelljammer, other than it just is crazy and wacky enough that I think it would really like work to recreate the only one season of Firefly as a D&D campaign.
I love, like, there's just something there around, again, it's like people are like, I love the creativity and constraints, right? Of how can you take, like, if you do like episode for episode, like how can I make the next scene of our RPG, again, it doesn't have to be seen, like a direct, but how do we get really inspired? Like, I'm going to tell the same kind of story as episode 3 of Firefly, right? In our third session of that. Like, I think just trying to figure out would be so much fun, right?
And
like,
the Janetown would be
right
one of the greatest episodes,
right?
To
and then it's
one
like,
of the party members somehow,
how do you twist that, right? To make it
becomes a hero in this community.
And because the fun part, right, the fun part, right, is you're playing it is even if you're familiar with Firefly, so you're getting all these things that are like, oh, that's kind of cool, but you're always like, well, how is it really, like, don't really know, right? You're seeing these really cool kind of callback things, but you don't really know how is it going to play out for this time, right? Or this thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that would just be so much fun to play in.
I don't know that I have a miniature one. So do you have any other?
I don't know if I'm trying to think of all the different ones I'm just trying going through things that we've John and I have always had ideas for, or we've kind of run, or in some of that. I mean,
I think there's an Abercrombie adaptation waiting. I think the Heroes would be a great skirmish miniature game. Like, use Frostgrave, use a rule set where it's a band of warriors defending not quite like your Zulu idea where it's waves and waves, but a long drawn out battle over a single hill for
and that could be again. And is that one where it is more of a competitive, like, do you play the two sides, right? Because again, that's what's cool about Heroes, right? That book is they do kind of flash between kind of the different things and how you do that. God, that would be fun.
And recreate the terrain, like basically do whatever skirmish game, the Heroes, and just recreate the battle as a 5 or 6 turn game.
And I don't I'm just trying to think what was and maybe again, if we talk about pre-built ones, so maybe I'll steal what is the I think it's the Everyday Heroes RPG. They actually have done cinematic source books for that, and one of them that they did was what's the mech movie? Sorry, now it's like
Pacific Rim.
Pacific Rim. I think I talked about it. I played in that scenario at Gen Con, and I'm like, I feel like I'm in this movie around something. They did a really nice job with that rule set and just making it feel, because we basically, I think we played in pairs. So there's 4 of us, and we paired off, and 2 of us were each in one of the mechs as we went through and played. And there's some cool mechanics on how you kind of interact. Again, if you're not familiar with the movie, go watch Pacific Rim, but basically you're 2 people and they get kind of linked around some of that. So again, that they've done some, again, as we talk about kind of the pre-made stuff, they've done some, and because I think they also have I think a Kong Island rule book out there. They've done something for the Crow. Which is one of my favorite whatever. I haven't dug into that to see how good that kind of thing. So maybe those are pre-canned ideas, so I don't have to think of any more, at least on the RPG side. But
and so this last one is a concept, and I'm back to role-playing games. Have you read the book The Grim Bastards? About they're like cavalry, like they're half orc, like pig riders, but they're like a group of kind of mercenaries. And it has this like biker gang feel to it. So there's this idea of like a Sons of Anarchy in a fantasy setting, like that motorcycle club, but be it like they're riders, right? Horse, whatever. And it's almost that like criminal, but they're like somewhat altruistic at the end of the day, but they're wanted, right? I think that could be a cool campaign too, is kind of like take Sons of Anarchy biker gang and skin it as a, you've got your clubhouse, your stronghold, you've got your leader in the power struggle, and but yeah, these are all shows that I've really enjoyed, but I'm like I want to use that and retell that story.
Cool. Well, hopefully we gave people some ideas.
Some inspiration.
Like, again, whether it's whatever you're reading and
Playin and Slayin battle. It could be like a 4-character RPG deathmatch between Troy and Ty and Bryce and Josh for which host comes out on top.
Yeah, we'll use there's many gladiator rule sets out there we can figure out.
Will you do it with that dice gladiator game that Raf showed us?
Oh, Who won? I don't think we won. I think Raf's son won, and whatever. None of us won.
So. Yeah. All right. So go tell your own stories, and then let us know. Drop us some comments if you have any ideas that you think would be cool as well, or things you've played or done that were based on books or films or songs. All right. That's going to bring us to the part of the show where we talk about kind of some of the things coming up. We are in June now at the time of recording. So we are getting very close to the RoseCon in Green Lake, Wisconsin, June 26th.
I hope they appreciate how much we've pushed their event.
Every episode, we've told at least 10 of our listeners about it for the last several months. So hopefully they've seen an uptick in their registration. Are you going? Did you clear your calendar and go?
No, I did not.
No, yeah, me either. However, I am going to Gen Con July 31st through August 3rd. Is that right?
Yep.
Feels like it's early. That's a July start for Gen Con. All right.
Yep.
So gonna be fun. Maybe next episode or two we'll talk about our schedules and kind of what we have lined up as we head towards Gen Con. It's been a couple years since I went. I know you and Ben have gone the last.
Yep.
The last couple.
I don't miss.
But,
I haven't missed in however many years.
Yeah,
I kind of
you always go.
Because I have a 3-digit badge.
Yeah, I
feel like that makes I need to go then or something. But
I get burned out and frustrated, and then have to like build back up the like things I enjoy about Gen Con and miss about it, so that I'm not just embittered.
Although I am last year I took my daughter when she was 11, and that was a completely different experience. And so that was, again, I don't know that I do that every year, but I think that was a really cool kind of palate cleanser. Like, all right, this is a completely different. And she had enough fun that I think she's even kind of like, so I think again, maybe it's every other or something like that. Because like I said, I don't know that everybody anymore wants to go out every year. So, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it'll be fun to be down there. I think we'll have a good group down there.
Yeah, it'll be good. I think Tom's talking about flying up from his new home in North Carolina to come at least for like Thursday night through Sunday or something. But all right. Well, as always, it has been fun, and we appreciate any feedback and comments. So like and subscribe. There will be little things if you're watching on YouTube in the corner to do. I think down here and maybe over here, or kind of here. I'll have to line it up sometime. I'll see where I'm pointing.
Yeah, I don't even know where I put them, so
I can put little markers. You know how you have like stage markers for where you go. I'll have my pointing marker, so I know I'm pointing to the like and to the subscribe. But comments, and then contact us. Names at basementofdeath.com. Info. Go to the website. Hasn't been updated in a while, unless you go to the cool scenarios and gaming specific stuff. But maybe someday we'll update the main page.
Someday.
And what we should do on the main page is upload my AI generated baby podcast intro. Maybe that's the update.
Maybe that's the update that everybody needed. Yeah, it could be.
Or the B-roll footage. Maybe you'll insert. You'll just insert that clip. That got us in some child labor law issues probably when I had a 16-month-old child record the Playin and Slayin intro and outro. Speaking of intros and outros, Troy, it's been a wonderful time. Episode 92. Any final thoughts?
It's been fun. This is good. I hope people will gave people a little inspiration. It shared a little inspiration that gets bouncing around in our heads for all the different games we like to do. So
absolutely. Go out there and play more games and have fun with your friends. And also keep the dice rolling, the drinks on ice, and no matter what, keep playing and slaying.